Part 1 For the Love of Stark. Question: Is there a grand northern conspiracy? And if so, is it one large unified conspiracy or is it separate factions? To answer these questions, we're going to start with Robb's will. So, open your books to Catelyn 5 and the Storm of Swords or chapter 45, where we learn a whole lot. We learn about Seven Streams and Hagsmire, we learn about the environment there, and we learn that it's basically what you would expect to see going into the Neck and is similar to Sansa's description of the areas entering and exiting the Neck when traveling to King's Landing. This is important later, but keep that in mind. Continuing, we learn of Robb's plans to retake Moat Cailin and leave slash trap slash imprison Catelyn and Seaguard. We also hear of the knowledge of Balon Greyjoy's death spread about the realm. In that chapter, we go on to meet the captain of the Manaham. The popular theory here is that the captain of this old township actually has Robb's will and is taking it back to Old Town. This is supported by the fact that Robb bid him to wait outside instead of just having someone else pay him for this information, along with the fact that six major houses witnessed and signed to support it. King Aegon the Fourth, the Unworthy, legitimized his kids without six approvals, though he was the king of the Seven Kingdoms. And Ruth legitimized his son without any other approvals, and he's only warden of the North. Why did Robb require great houses from the North and the Riverlands to sign this piece of paper that we're calling a will, but we'll get into that later? I submit that it was because he wanted to keep the North unified. Robb, after telling everyone his plans about Balon, has everyone affix their seals to his will, which many of those in the fandom consider to be a legitimization of Jon Snow and an installation of him as king in the North. Here are some things to consider for the GRA and for the GNC generally. Those present at the will signing, and I'm doing air quotes here, signing were where they are and where they ended up. Catelyn, she was, of course, with the North Wind at River Run and then at the Twins, and she's currently terrorizing the Freys in the Riverlands. Mage Mormont was in the same place. We presume that she's at Greywater Watch. Galbert Glover, same place. We presume that he's at Greywater Watch. Jason Mallister, same place, but he should be captive at Seaguard. He should have been brought from the Twins to Seaguard by Black Walder Frey. Edmure Tully is en route to Casterly Rock right now, along with Jane Westerling, and the Great John is still captive at the Twins. Of course, all of these people are very, very much alive. Well, Cat's kind of alive. And this, I believe, is the center of our theory. These houses swore an oath. These houses are also at the center of the GNC. And should they keep these oaths on the basis of that, at this point, Rebel Alliance, the basis of the Rebel Alliance would be Robb's will. But first, let's look at some things I think that are typically overlooked in this chapter. Number one, Robb called the meeting not to make Jon his heir, but to disseminate battle plans and finally dole out a punishment to Catelyn. Naming Jon his heir was not a secret, but a declaration, a normal happening because of circumstance. This is something that was signed into law basically. Robb needed to keep confidence in himself and in his kingdom like any king would, so he named an heir. He has no sons and his brothers are dead. It's a great move politically. This would not be a secret. The battle plans would be, so Mage and Galbert were sent off immediately to pop those things off. But naming an heir is pretty commonplace and would not be something that the lords would not be able to speak of. This is no secret marriage pact. This was a declaration of an heir and really wasn't even a will. It was a declaration. That's why it was sent to Old Town. It's law. There is no secret marriage pact. There is no secret pact of any kind. It was simply a declaration of an heir and information that was likely to spread throughout the Mormont, Glover, Mallister, Tully, and Umber houses. Though the spread may have been curtailed by the Wed Wedding, this information could have easily spread from any survivors of these forces. Something to keep in mind with the Brotherhood Without Banners and the Blackfish's garrison in the Riverlands. I just don't think that Robb's quote will was a will at all. It was more of a declaration declaring Jon as his heir, and it's not something that would have been secreted. It is something that would have been pretty well known by his generals, of course, that were in the room, and then it would have spread out through those houses slowly at first, and then more at a quicker pace. Because of the Red Wedding, I think we don't see that spread, but it will come into play later. Just keep in mind the fact that it wasn't a secret. It wasn't a will, it was a declaration. And the whole purpose of that meeting was to establish battle plans. So let's keep going. Number two, there are ways through the neck known only to Cranogman. So if you want to get into and through the neck, you're going to need one. Or you want to be really obvious that you are looking for them because you can still get lost if they don't come out and find you. 3, we also learn that the Blackfish was named Warden of the Southern Marches. That's right, the Lord of the Southern Marches that is currently flying his Stark flag and repping his king, probably in a castle full of men that are aware that John was named king once Edmure took his bath, is free in the Riverlands, but we'll get back to that later. In essence, four noble houses, Stark, Umber, Mormont, and Glover, have pledged to support this new king or queen in the north. This isn't a secret pact, but is a declaration. These four houses have not only pledged to be loyal, but have pledged to be loyal to John Stark and to advance the Stark cause. If the GNC and thus the GRA are in play, we would see that these four houses should be doing the most movement or work towards a new Stark in Winterfell. Let's keep that in mind when we review the houses' declared loyalties versus their actual actions. So let's take a look at this map. Right now, it stands that the Mormonts, the Mountain clans, and the Glovers, along with the clans that are sworn to them, are on the side of none other than Stannis Baratheon, while the Umber forces are split, and the Karstark, Bolton, Hornwood, Serwyn, Tallheart, Riswell, Dustin, Stout, and Flint forces all seem to be on the same side. Whether or not they actually want to be there is against the point, but they all seem to be fighting for the Boltons. I think if we just look deeply into what these houses are actually doing versus what they're saying, we'll actually come out with a different map. Let's go over the Great Northern Houses. First off, House Bolton. Totally disloyal house. Obviously, they are not a part of the GNC. House Serwyn, loyal to the Starks, only a half a day's ride away from Winterfell, and they had men at that battle in the Winter Town. Wouldn't many of these men go home following the battle in the Winter Town, or hide out with the clans in the Deepwood? Stannis writes that Tallheart and Serwyn men that have actually survived the battle have joined him. But the problem with this is that it's been a pretty long time since the battle in the Wintertown, and Stannis coming to the north and coming down to free Deepwood Mott and then Winterfell. The question would be, where were these men? Where did they go? Surely they would have needed help in order to survive. All of the small folk have been running towards White Harbor, yet these men, these fighting men, have decided to stay right where they are in close proximity to Winterfell relatively. They had to be having help. But I guess the question is, from whom? Also, Lord Roose Bolton leaves a strong force of Stout and Serwyn men under the command of Sir Kyle and Ronald Stout to strengthen the defense of the Trident against the Lannisters. But they disappear after the Red Wedding. Could word have traveled about the battle outside of Winterfell and the Bolton slash Karstark treachery at the Twins? Where did those 600 men go? Do they know about the declaration? Do they know that Jon Stark is now the king in the north? The Lord and his male heir have been killed. Jonelle Serwyn, Medgar Serwyn's daughter, is now the lady of House Serwyn, and she appears to be staying as far away from Ramsay as possible, though she is sending forces. It may be that she sent forces to Stannis as well, or possibly to the clans. House Dustin appears disloyal to the Starks through and through. I mean, really, Lady Barbary Dustin is markedly pissed with Ned for her husband's death, and at his father for Brandon's betrothal to Catelyn Stark. However, Lady Dustin is the sister of the three Reeswell men with questionable behavior in Winterfell, and she also went into the crypt seemingly to verify the story of Osha and Rickon escaping. Barbary may now be a part of the conspiracy, as there are still male Starks alive and her family seems to be cursed. She would not be able to stomach Ramsay ruling the North, knowing that he would probably go to Barrowtown and burn it, and that he probably killed her nephew Dominic. But we'll visit Barbary a little bit later when we talk about the Riswolds. The Flints of the Mountains, loyal to House Stark, currently a part of the Stannis coalition, and they're great climbers. Tried climbing at Deepwood Mott, will probably do it again at Winterfell. Old Nan mentions that's why Bran can climb so well, jokingly. Ned's maternal grandmother is a Flint. They show up to the wall to hang out with Jon after Stannis visits, but I think it's far more than that as they bring tales of fighting men. Foil alert, and we'll get to that later too. Flints of the Finger should have loyalty to the Starks. Their lord Robin was killed at the Red Wedding, and the stone hand of the Flints of the Finger was seen at the siege camp before the battle outside of Winterfell by Theon. It would stand to reason that some of these men, or at least what happened to these men, would have traveled back with the survivors wherever they went. However, their numbers had dwindled, though they were not absent like the Umber and Bolton and Glover forces. They seem to be having a trouble with manpower. Flint's of Widow's Watch. Lady Liesa's Flint son was murdered by the Freys at the Red Wedding, and she likely has familiar ties to House Hornwood. They have good reason to be against the Boltons, sharing information with the sisters. One of their men was killed in the stables, but what did he see? And are all of the men in on the treachery? I would say that House Flint is pretty unified. If Lady Liesa's Flint son was Lord Robin and Lord Robin was the Lord of Flint's Finger, then that means that these two houses have a very close familiar tie. Perhaps he married a cousin. I would stand to reason that as Widow's Watch will take its leave and take its lead from White Harbor, then the Flints of the Finger may also, with the Flints of the Mountains being a part of the Stannis coalition. It seems that the Flints are unified and against Bolton and for a Stark resurgence. House Glover, loyal to House Stark. Galbart Glover was sent with Mage Mormont and Jason Mallister into the Neck to find Howland Reed and retake the Neck and Moat Cailin. While Robert Glover was framed by Roose and is colluding with Lord Wyman Manderley and Davos Seaworth. It's important to remember that House Glover's seat, Deepwood Mott, is in the Wolfswood and has several Wolfswood clans sworn to it. Not only that, its lady and current ruler of the castle is no other than Sybil Locke Glover. Not only does she have a familiar tie to House Stark as a Locke, but she's a clanswoman. She would be familiar with their concealment and communications methods, which may be of some use when she prays in the Godswoods. Can I get a witness? House Hornwood. Ramsay Bolton has adopted the title of Lord of Hornwood, and Hornwood forces have joined him at Moat Cailin. However, the both lawful and more preferred heirs, Baraena Hornwood and Larence Snow, are still alive. Larence Snow being the bastard son of Hallis Hornwood, the former Lord Hornwood, and Baraena, Hallis's sister. The Hornwoods would have had people killed at the Red Wedding and massacred at the Green Fork. Their lands were attacked by Ramsay and their lady starved to death in a tower. They have quite a bit to be upset about and for good reason to be disloyal, and some of their men are a part of that 600-man force that disappeared in the Riverlands. House Karstark is an interesting one. Helping to murder Stark and other northern houses at the Red Wedding, Karstark men are under the control of the castellan of Carhold, Arnulf Karstark. However, the true heir to Carhold was last known to be in Maidenpool, and his sister Alice Karstark now has her own mini army to take back home to Carhold. She believes Carhold will open its gates to her, which is a good sign that she has her people's loyalty. People who are now fighting on the side of Stannis and who would most likely know nothing of Arnulf's planned treachery. I would say that for now, House Karstark has to be marked as neutral. In the upcoming Battle of Ice, they will likely add Stannis, but Arnulf has caused some real political damage. House Karstark abandons its countrymen, and even though their lord did disobey their king and had his head chopped off, they went ahead and took part in the slaughtering of their friends, family, and neighbors. I think the North remembers this, and retribution will come quickly and harshly. but for now we will list them as just a disloyal northern house. House Little aided Bran during his fight, but did not take him in. The Littles do join Stannis' march after the Red Wedding. I say they're loyal to the Starks. House Locke, in the Merman's court, speaking out against Ramsay, has a familiar relation to House Stark, and the members of that house have died at the Red Wedding. While the Locke sigils are spotted at the meeting in Barrow Hall, Manderley tells Davos that they will follow his lead. We'll get back to that meeting in Barrow Hall in a subsequent video. House Manderley. Do we even have to go here? Pro Stark House, through and through, supported the secession of the North from the rest of the Seven Kingdoms and has been stockpiling weaponry and ships, and is colluding with Davos Seaworth to get Rickon back. I know people have some conflicting thoughts about Lord Manderley, but I really like this guy. Lord Manderley is an opportunist, sure, but I think most smart people are. What Lord Manderley wasn't trying to do was control the North through treachery. He was still trying to be loyal. He wanted to be the financial center. He also wanted to be the naval power, not for himself, but for the North, for the Starks. As we can see, he's basically on a kamikaze mission right now inside of Winterfell. If it was really for himself, I don't think he'd put himself in that much danger. We'll get back to that later. House Mormont. 4 women of Bear Island went south with Robb, not just Daisy. The Mormonts were dedicated to the cause. Their house witnessed the will, quotes, and Mage was trusted with finding Howland Reed. After the Red Wedding, House Mormont continued declaring for House Stark, and Alysanne Mormont was obviously on her way to liberate Deepwood Mott, executing a well-planned surprise attack against the Iron Men while they were on their ships out at sea. You see, Asha only leaves half on the strand, the others would be at sea. Alysanne Mormont was able to carefully plan an assault on Ironborn from longships and fishing ships. She was able to capture them and either kill them or burn the ships. Like, Homegirl is bad, and not only is she bad, we have to take a step back here. House Mormont, how big do you really think their forces are? Would they really have that many men to be able to send to take Deepwood Mott? How much more likely is it that within the 2 months between Stannis receiving the letter back from Lyanna Mormont saying that there is no king in the north but a Stark, how likely is it that during those 2 months, Alysanne was not at Bear Island? That's why Lyanna was able to answer that way. Instead, she was traveling through the mountains and through the Wolfswood, gathering strength to retake Deepwood Mott. Um, I just think it's really interesting and pretty great. Like, she was really able to by herself because everyone else is south supposedly by herself able to rally the troops and the people that are sworn to her house as well as mountain clans and execute a very well planned and very successful assault on the Ironborn. I believe that she probably would have been able to take Deepwood Mott herself, but because of Stannis' involvement, and we'll get into this a little bit later, because of Stannis' involvement, um, she launched what would seem to be a simultaneous attack. So we'll see. Um, we'll get more into that. I actually have a couple quotes that are pretty great. House Nori lost people at the Red Wedding. They live in the mountains and they have a familiar connection to the Starks. They're a mountain clan and they have joined Stannis' march. I would say that they are loyal to the Starks like the rest of the clan. House Reed. House Reed sent Jojen and Mira, and they were retaking Moat Cailin under King Robb's orders after his death, and are possibly outside of Winterfell, but we'll get back to that later on in this video. I know that they get a lot of flack, but I think that House Reed is playing it smart. They're playing the end game. They know who the real enemies are. House Ryswell. As the family of Barbary Dustin, we could assume that they are a disloyal house. However, men from House Ryswell are a part of the 600 men that disappeared out of the Trident following the Red Wedding. Roger Ryswell defends Theon when he was accused of the murders in Winterfell, going so far as to call his own men-at-arms, one of the slain, a drunk when finding him dead, and quelling real thoughts of murder. If the Lord said so, why investigate? After that, he says he doubted Theon was even capable of it, throwing suspicion right off of him. His brother Rickard Roosewell is awfully cozy with one of Mance's spear wives, and the third Roosewell, Roose, well, he keeps sending scouts out into the deep wood or into the wolf's wood that never come back. Why would you keep sending them? Why wouldn't you send a larger force? Something's afoot here. House Tallheart, loyal to the Starks, and their heir was drowned by Ironborn, first to pay respects to Catelyn after Ned's death, and many men slaughtered during the war because of Bolton betrayal. Some Tallheart men survived the battle in the Wintertown and have joined Stannis, and some are on Ramsay's side, some of which may even be survivors of the battle at the Wintertown. After the Battle of Winterfell, or the Battle at the Wintertown, did none of them return home to tell the tale? Where were they? And if they went home, they carried the truth of what happened at Winterfell. And if they didn't go home, they still carried that truth, but they carried it to different corners of the realm. House Umber witnessed the declaration, working with Abel/Mance, and they seem unified and coordinated, sending what seems to be a kamikaze winter force inside of Winterfell and a small I guess you would call it a platoon or company of men, young men outside. On the flip side, the Umbers have been aware of the Karstark treachery early since his Horsbane's meeting with Ramsay at the Dreadfort. Guess Theon thought. And they do not seem to have told Stannis, though from a northern point of view, Stannis is really a non-factor. House Wool, Mountain Clan, fiercely loyal to the Starks and appear to be allied with the other clans, and House Mormont. Now that we have taken a quick look at the major houses, their declarations, and activity, I think it's safe to say that most houses are at a minimum disloyal to House Bolton and have loyalty still to House Stark. Let's answer the question then. With all of this disloyalty going on, is there a plan to take the North back? Is there a grand Northern conspiracy? I say yes. We have a declaration of an heir and the pledged support of major Northern houses and the continuation of plans and strategy to retake the North by these Northern houses. We have major houses unified in the declaration as well as the plans, strategies, and actions to retake the North. We also have a proxy war being fought. But how big is it and how unified is it?
Answer to that question, we'll see you guys later for the second installment of the GNA. Until then, I'm Lady D. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.